Hello, and welcome to the Relationship Anxiety Podcast. I'm your host, Ksenia, a certified relationship anxiety life coach, and I'm really excited for what we're going to talk about today, and that is what it actually means to overcome the natural man. Before we get into it, though, I do want to apologize for how infrequently these episodes have been coming out. There's been a lot going on over here, and I'm hoping to be able to be more consistent going forward. So stay tuned. Hopefully, these podcasts will come out more frequently than they have in the last 2 months. But anyway, our topic today is what it actually means to overcome the natural man. And this is in reference to different scriptures and um, church lessons about overcoming the natural man. And the natural man, we're taught, is an enemy to God, that it's unrighteous, right? And so, first, I want to just kind of talk about what that is, what some of the misconceptions we have are about the natural man. If you Google what is the natural man, the Google AI comes up with a definition for it that basically says that the natural man is someone who is unspiritual, focused on worldly desires and appetites, and is often seen as an enemy to God because of this self-centered orientation. And I totally agree with that. I think that sometimes in church, though, this concept of the natural man is taken to a little bit of an extreme. And instead of focusing on the natural man as someone who is like unfocused on God and gives in to like a lot of worldly desires, we start to vilify different emotions that we have when we're talking about the natural man. Sometimes in church, we start to say, oh, if you feel attracted to someone who isn't your partner, that's the natural man. Or if you feel angry, that's the natural man. We need to get rid of anger. We need to get rid of attraction to other people. We need to get rid of fear, right? That idea is what I want to kind of push against today in this episode and teach you what I view the natural man as and how I try to overcome it consistently every day. Now, it's really important to remember that God created us. He created our bodies, he created our brains and our emotions, and that different emotional responses we have are actually beautifully designed by God. So I want you to imagine that you're in an alleyway and someone jumps out behind a corner and is about to like rob you. In this moment, a lot of time what happens is we go into what's called a fight or flight response. I've talked about this before, but the fight response, you're going to feel anger. You're going to want to fight this person to get away. The flight response is you're going to feel fear. That's going to lead you to run away from this person to safety. Now, the fight or flight response is a beautiful thing that God has given us in order to help keep us safe and help protect us from enemies, right? Anger and fear, in this case, are both beautifully designed by God to keep us safe and to keep those around us safe, right? If someone breaks into my house and my husband starts fighting them, I'm actually really grateful for that fight response, for that anger response, because it keeps me safe. With each emotion we have, it's important to go back to the root of it and to think, okay, why did God create this emotion? Why is it a useful emotion in humans? Why is it useful for humans to feel anger? Right? Because it keeps us safe. Why is it useful for humans to feel fear? Helps keep us safe. Or maybe anger helps you stand up for things that are important to you and true and that you value. Maybe anger gives you motivation to stand up for what you believe. Or let's take attraction to someone else who's not your spouse. Why did God create the feeling of attraction in humans? So that we can create families, so that we can get married and have children, right? So the feeling of attraction isn't the problem. The problem is what we do with that feeling. So that's the first step. The first step to any emotion that you feel that you think might be the natural man is to first stop vilifying the emotion and think back to what is the purpose of this emotion? Why did God create this emotion for humans to have? Now, the second thing we want to do after we have stopped vilifying the emotion is we still want to make sure that we are in charge of the emotion, not the other way around. So I like to think about this as driving in a car with all your emotions. All of those emotions are welcome, and God created them to be there, to be in your car, because we need them at different times. They're useful to us in different times in our lives, right? But sometimes our brains get tricked and think that we're being attacked by someone in an alley when we're not actually being attacked, right? My brain might think that when my sister disagrees with me, it's the same as someone pulling a gun out and aiming it at me, right? My brain automatically will go to fight or flight. It's going to go to anger or fear at her. And in this moment, the anger emotion that's driving around in my car with me, my fake car, imaginary car in my brain, anger is going to want to jump in the driver's seat and start being in charge. Now, what I believe overcoming the natural man is allowing ourselves to feel anger or fear or whatever it is without letting that emotion jump in the driver's seat. But we also don't want to kick the emotion out of the car because anger and fear and attractiveness and all of these emotions are useful to us in different times in our lives. And if we just get rid of the feeling of anger or the feeling of fear or the feeling of attraction, it's going to cause problems later down the road because they're useful. So we don't want to kick the emotion out of the car, but we also don't want to let it drive. So let's say that my sister disagrees with me and I feel angry. What I want to do in that moment to overcome the natural man is to recognize, oh, okay, I'm feeling anger right now. I feel it in my chest. It feels big. It feels like fire, hot, red hot. This emotion is useful sometimes. I know that God gave me this emotion, but this isn't the time for me to fight off an attacker. It's okay for me to feel angry, but I'm still going to try to talk to my sister in a way that's loving and more aligned with with my true identity, my highest self. I want my highest self to be driving my car in that moment. It's okay for me to feel angry. There's nothing wrong with that. The goal is to still act from a space of love and curiosity for my sister. So, another example, a lot of us often feel fear. A lot of us with relationship anxiety live in a state of fear most of the time. And it can be really easy to vilify that fear and to think, oh, if I was truly godly or if I was truly a spiritual person, I would trust God and I wouldn't feel scared. What we want to do is recognize God gave me the ability to feel fear, and that's useful in some scenarios. But it's not useful in this scenario. So I'm going to feel fear and then still try to act from a place of love and curiosity. So that's one perspective on what it means to overcome the natural man. In a different light, we also talk about the natural man as loving excess, maybe doing things like drinking or being lustful or doing a lot of things that psychologists like to call buffering. So if you look up what is buffering emotions, Google says buffering emotions is a coping mechanism where someone uses external activities or substances like overeating, excessive social media use, alcohol, or shopping to avoid or numb negative or uncomfortable internal emotions. So, a lot of the time when we talk about the natural man, we think about someone who is doing a lot of these buffering activities. Someone who's overeating, someone who's excessively using social media or alcohol or shopping, right? And so in this case, what overcoming the natural man means is, again, we don't want to vilify what's going on in your life because if you're doing any of these activities, what you need is so much grace because what's going on is an uncomfortable emotion underneath that you don't want to feel. And what overcoming the natural man is going to look like in this scenario is getting really curious about what you don't want to feel and learning how to feel it. And that is so much easier said than done. And you'll probably need the help of a coach or therapist to do that. But overcoming the natural man, like I said, in this scenario, is going to look like feeling the emotions, processing them, so that you don't feel the need to do buffer anymore, to do these buffering activities. With a lot of these buffering activities, we usually try to use willpower to overcome them. We try to just quit pornography cold turkey, or we try to quit drinking alcohol cold turkey, or say, I'm never going to shop. Like, I'm not shopping for anything except what I absolutely need, right? Or I'm going to start this new diet so that I don't overeat anymore. We try to use willpower. But the problem is that overcoming the natural man using willpower doesn't work very well because there's still that wounded emotion deep down that hasn't been addressed and that needs to be addressed in order to heal and move past the buffering activities. So, this is my invitation to you to find a coach or a therapist. I would love to help you to learn how to address that wounded emotion underneath in a way that feels safe and that your body can tolerate so that you can stop doing these buffering behaviors and overcome the natural man. Now, when we're talking about buffering, like I said, we usually talk about like different substances or things that we do to kind of numb or escape emotion. But I want to propose that pride is a buffer in a way. We talk a lot of the time about the natural man being self-centered and prideful. And what I want to help you understand is the root of what's going on there so that you can be compassionate and so that you can show up from a place of love instead of pride or self-centeredness. Again, what we want to do is ask the question, how is this emotion trying to help me? How is pride trying to help me? And I've talked about this in another episode, but a lot of the time, pride is actually trying to cover up shame. It's trying to cover up something that we're insecure about or that we think we won't be loved if we don't do or if we're not good at. And so pride, when we fully understand it, pride is trying to help us. And from that lens, again, we can understand it, understand why it makes so much sense to feel pride, but then show up from a place of love and curiosity and compassion instead of letting pride drive. So, overall, with all of these things that we've talked about today, what I believe overcoming the natural man is recognizing how each emotion we feel and our weaknesses are trying to help us. Why it makes so much sense for us to feel anger or fear or pride and then to purposefully allow that emotion to stay in the car with you, but to put your highest self in the driver's seat and still act from a place of love and goodness and curiosity. I would love to help you learn how to do this. If you are looking for a coach or a therapist to help you, I can help you find a good therapist. I would also love to coach you. If you're on the fence about coaching, go to my Instagram and sign up for a free mini session. This is just a 30-minute long mini session where I'll coach you and you can kind of get a taste for what coaching is like. And again, that's on my Instagram at Cresenia Claire Coaching. But in that call, we can go into some of these topics that we've talked about today. How to actually overcome the natural man, how to accept your emotions and understand how they're trying to help you, and then show up from your highest self anyway. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye.